Alright, playing a little catch up here. Wanted to give my thoughts on a couple of the fights from this weekend. First and foremost, Francisco Vargas versus Orlando Salido for Vargas's WBC super featherweight belt. Just an excellent, excellent fight. Great fight. Better fight than I even thought it was going to be. Although it wound up going the distance, which I didn't think it would. I thought that it would be just a tough, grinding fight, back and forth, warfare from the opening bell, and I figured that Vargas would eventually stop Orlando Salido with just an accumulation of punishment and the fact that he had sharper shots. But to be honest, I thought that overall that Orlando Salido's shots were the sharper ones. The way he turned his shots over were just really, really good. I mean, he had a little bit of a slow start, as he tends to do for the most part. Vargas started off well, worked off the jab, but the problem is, as soon as he started to hurt Salido in the second and the third round, was he went right in for the kill, trying to take Salido out. And I can't necessarily blame him too much for trying to do that, considering the fact that Salido's been hurt and dropped a number of times, especially in the past few years, namely by Wang Haya, Turtzak Kodkijim, Mikey Garcia, Yuriorkis Gamboa, and Rocky Martinez. But none of those guys were ever able to really consistently hurt and eventually stop him. I mean, he did get hurt a number of times, especially in that Turtzak Kodkijim fight. That was probably the most brutal fight, one of the most brutal fights that I've ever seen. Salido versus Turtzak Kodkijim. I'd suggest um, anybody that wants to convince anyone else that that boxing is the shit, show them that fight, man. That fight was incredible. Um, but this fight was excellent stuff too. It's just that it lacked quite the same level of brutality as that one. A little bit more skill though. A little bit more skill, considering Vargas is a more skilled fighter than Kodkijim is. But the thing is, Vargas was making that mistake of trying to take Salido out every time he had him hurt, and Salido's just not a guy that's gonna go down. He's not a guy that's gonna get hurt, and he's a guy that's extremely, extremely calm under fire. If you notice his style, it's almost like he elevates himself when somebody hurts him. He kind of reminds me of Juan Manuel Marquez in that fashion, where as soon as whenever Marquez has been hurt in the past throughout his career, that's when he becomes infinitely more dangerous, because all of a sudden every counter opportunity he's taking it and he's throwing combinations while taking it. With Salido, it's the same thing, and he has but except for he has a style that's more inside than outside, the way Marquez's is. So Salido is just able to bob and weave, and he uses that almost kind of modified peekaboo, Joe Frazier, Mike Tyson-esque style, where he's just bobbing, rolling, weaving all over on the inside, and he's actually really slick on the inside. It's very tough to get a beat on him a lot of the times. Whereas even though he's throwing shots that look like they're looping, he angles them and arcs them in such a way that they're landing just flush and they're landing pinpoint. It's almost like he's throwing elbows the way he throws his short hooks with both the left and the right hand. Short hooks, short uppercuts, crosses, and the whole nine. And he was able to back off and hurt Vargas repeatedly whenever Vargas went inside and tried to take him out. Vargas was really having his best opportunities at mid to long range. But every time he got in close with Salido trying to finish him is when he actually gave the play away. And that just pretty much happened a number of times. Salido came on real strong in the middle rounds. Vargas started to recover a little bit in the late rounds, and they just kind of went back and forth every round. I thought a lot of the rounds were close, and I thought a lot of the times Vargas would start the rounds really strong, and then Salido would finish him strong. There was a couple rounds in there that I thought Salido managed to kind of steal by finishing just extremely, extremely strong after an initial good start from Vargas. So when the judges came down with the scores of 114, 114 twice, and 115, 113 Vargas, I didn't complain too much. I didn't think too badly of it. Although I thought the 115, 113 probably should have gone to Salido, but it was an even style of fight, and so I can't necessarily complain too much about a draw, in spite of the fact that I had Salido winning 115, 113. I thought the draw with Rocky Martinez for Salido was a lot more egregious than this one. I thought Salido clearly won that fight. But this was just an excellent fight. I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch between the two of them, but I'm imagining that a little bit that greater money for both of them, and not as much wear and tear will be with other fights other than each other. Especially considering this coming week we have Vasyl Lomachenko versus Roman Martinez, and depending on who wins that, we may see any number of uh, mix and match combinations going into that. Although it must be said that Miguel Berchelt, the WBO mandatory, is looming for the winner of that fight. So there's a possibility that they may drop the belt or something else may happen. Not entirely sure because Berchelt might end up taking the step aside money. Berchelt against any of those guys would be a great fight, I think, too. Because Berchelt's a huge puncher, probably the biggest puncher of all of those dudes. Then of course you have Jezreel Corrales and Javier Fortuna. Still have yet to fight for the WBA title, and got Jose Pedraza out there as well. On the undercard, Julian Ramirez versus Abraham Lopez. Another great fight. This was a fight that was a little bit more on the tactical side, though, not quite as much straight out warfare. I thought Abraham Lopez won the first couple of rounds. He started off doing real good. Excellent left hook to the body off of jab. He was throwing the jab, then the left hook to the body. Like a real clever little combo that he was able to use real effectively against Ramirez. Ramirez didn't quite really get started until, I'd say, the third round, where he started to land a little bit more clean, a little bit more often. And in spite of the fact that Lopez was probably outworking and outlanding him, the shots that Ramirez was landing tend to be a little bit more eye-catching, more like head-snapping shots. The only problem is, in spite of the fact that he started taking over the mid-rounds, he started to gas a little bit around the 7th and 8th, and Lopez got right back into the fight, and the last few rounds were very much tit for tat. So when the judges came down with the scores that they had, and I was actually really surprised that they had Lopez up that wide. I thought it was pretty much a drawish type fight, an even fight going, all the way through the 10 rounds. It's kind of a shame that it didn't go 12 because I think the fight could have heated up with 2 more rounds to go. But Abraham Lopez wound up winning. I was really surprised considering Julio Ramirez was really more the A-side fighter, the younger guy, the guy with more probable prospects in the future with more opportunity, you'd think, just in general, the way boxing generally goes. But Abraham Lopez managed to get it. So, props to Abraham Lopez for that. Not quite sure if either of them are ready for the championship level just yet. Probably next year is when either of them would be ready for a title shot. But you never know. Depends on how everything goes. You got some new blood at featherweight at the moment, so we'll see how that all shakes out. On PBC on ESPN, we had Arthur Beterbiev, and he just showed exactly the way he does. Punishing his opponent, just crushing him, taking him out in 4 rounds. Dropped him. What was that? 4 times? I'm trying to remember. I think it was 4 times against Ezekiel Moderna, and Moderna just from the very first bell, you could tell that it was going to be problematic, and he dropped him in the 3rd, and then twice more in the 4th. The referee finally stopped the bout. Beterbiev had another easy victory. They had Adonis Stevenson in the crowd. I'd love to see that fight. Beterbiev versus Adonis Stevenson is an excellent fight. 2 monster punchers. And, should Beterbiev and Sergey Kovalev wind up winning their fights, if Kovalev manages to beat Ward, Beterbiev would manage to defeat Stevenson in a potential fight. Man, that would be an incredible clash between those two. But any way you match those guys up, depending on who wins those fights, would be just an excellent fight altogether. I just think that Beterbiev versus Kovalev would be something special, considering the power and the abilities that they have. Sure, that would probably be a blown-up version of Vargas versus Salido, something like that. A great fight. On the undercard of that fight, there was Bryant Perella. I'm failing to remember his opponent's name. I'll pull it up here in a second. But Bryant, the good fellow Perella, comes to fight in the tuxedo and everything. And just a whole lot of style and flash to his style. Good puncher, very good puncher. He went in there, took care of business, knocked his opponent out, called out basically the best and the biggest at welterweight. And so it'll be interesting to see how he goes from there. And then on Friday, there was the PBC card with Mickey Bay and Francis Barthelemy. Closer fight than I thought it would be. I thought Bay actually did better than I thought he would. He did really well to the body, going to Barthelemy's body. Francis Barthelemy in the mid-rounds started to tire a little bit, I thought. Although he picked it up again in the later rounds where Bay started to tire. He had a good jab. Overall, showed some good stuff. Fights generally the way I normally see Barthelemy do. And Bay just couldn't keep up with the overall pace for the full 12. So it's the championship rounds where I really thought he let himself down. I had Barthélemy up by 2. Thought the scores were just a little bit wide, but just a solid performance from Barthélemy once more. They had Richard Comey in the audience. He's looks like he's going to be the next opponent for Barthélemy as the top-ranked opponent for the IBF belt. I'd still favor Barthélemy in that fight, in spite of the fact that Richard Comey has, of course, a puncher's chance, big puncher, but I don't think he's as stylistically sound as Barthélemy. Although but you never know if he may be able to catch him somewhere in the to or the mid to late rounds where Barthélemy tends to gas just a little bit. But solid fights all around throughout the entire weekend, and I mean that's pretty much it for this one. I'll see you guys on the next one.